Hello and welcome to a video with me, Raindell. Today we'll be talking about EX jobs. We'll take a look at the whole first batch of EX jobs, aside from Unine Titas, because I've covered those in other videos. I'll be talking about my thoughts on their general use, whether it's worth for most people to go for them or not, and also just my thoughts on EX job in general as a new implementation in the game. I also want to say that in my previous video, I've announced that I wanted to do a 500 sub special, and I've chosen to do a Q&A and then also cover the marketing side a little bit, because people seem to have an interest in both, so why not? So if you have questions that you'd like to ask me, be it about the game, about other stuff, ask away. I will be recording this later today in the evening, so you have until tonight to ask your questions. Afterwards, I'll have recorded the video and it might be a bit too late for that. So that's it. And I guess we can hop over to Oelde's slide here, but I want to touch on EX jobs in general. I know a lot of people have mixed feelings about those. They are coming in the game rather early, and I feel like we haven't had content that's really challenging for our 99 units yet in terms of PvE, and we already get a stronger wave of units. The main reason I'm really interested in those, though, is because I love playing non-meta units. I love playing units that are unloved, or MR units. And for a lot of those units, the EX jobs really do them justice. And they go from unusable units to units that are actually very strong and become the best in their specific niche sometimes. So it's something that's very interesting, in my opinion, to be able to see these older units that we love but aren't necessarily as competitive anymore, and have ways to update them. And now we're getting the first EX jobs, which is their main job, but in the future they might be able to release EX jobs for sub-jobs as well, meaning that the units that you've invested in might be able to stay relevant longer in the game, and that would be really fun. So that's my thoughts so far, and I especially love the EX jobs for MR and lower rarity units, because often those units have stat issues, especially SR or lower. Like, they don't have enough attack to be relevant. Even if you were to build Sosha or Learte in their normal jobs, they don't do much. But EX jobs gives them a ton more offense, to the point that they can actually be somewhat competitive. But we'll take a look at that when we get to our lower rarity EX jobs. For now, let's begin with Oelde. And he is an interesting one. He has a pretty good amount of HP, and then a ton of attack. When he gets to 120, he has over 560 attack, and that's in the range of the EX soldiers. Like, it's the heaviest hitting, or at least the EX job characters with the highest base amount of attack. It's very, very high. And then with that, he has a couple nice upgraded abilities. Mainly his Sharp Spear gets defense penetration, which I think is a huge thing. You can't really be a damage dealer in the game right now and not have defense penetration, because we have access to such good defensive gear that even the squishiest characters come into battle with 20 defense or so, and then the most tanky ones can come into the battle with upwards of 60 defense. So if you don't have any sort of way to deal with the high defense, you can't be a reliable damage dealer for most teams. So that's a really good buff that he gets there. Then his Vacuum Slash gets upgraded. Gaining Pierce Resist Penetration, not that big a deal in my opinion, because Oelde can use Monk attacks and Samurai attacks, so he doesn't necessarily need this, in my opinion. His final move is interesting as well, super high modifier with 200, and then if there's 5 other dead units, it becomes a 300% modifier. I do want to point out that there is never going to be 5 dead units in PvP game modes, because that would mean he's the last one standing. So this is not designed to be a PvP move, but rather a PvE move that you can use to finish off battles against huge bosses, for example, with very powerful attacks. So that's what he looks like. Overall, I would not necessarily recommend him unless you're a big fan of the guy. He still suffers from a rather low range on most of his abilities. What he does do though is when he gets in front of somebody and manages to hit them, his damage will be among the highest for an EX unit. So he has some things going for himself, but he's not going to be top in the meta in any way. Second, let's look at Oldoa. And the first thing I want to point out is that Oldoa, for an EX job, has low-ish base stats in my opinion, especially her attack is only at 418. She's a soldier main job, right? But she has lower attack than Oelde, who's a lancer, so, and by a large margin. That's almost a 150 less attack. So that's something to keep in mind. She is rather fast with 64 agility, and her EX job gives her a lot more HP. So even though she's a soldier, which is a squishy base job, she's now able to withstand a couple hits now that she gets her EX job. Her abilities are interesting. She gets more HP again with her self-sacrifice. So that means it's going to make her last a bit longer on the battlefield and also make her Drain Force builds stronger. And I'm a big fan of Oldoa Drain Force because with the Exorcist card and Odin, she can be the unit with the highest Drain Force modifier in the game. So it's a fun thing. And that also applies to Osmos Force, so you could run her as a very, very powerful TP drain unit. I'm a little bit sad that this is the ability upgrade she got though, because the AI will never use it. So her EX upgrade is mainly interesting for manual play and PvE, because in manual play you might get a chance to absorb all the TP from a healer and render them useless, but generally if Oldoa's in range of a healer, she's going to one-shot them anyways. She doesn't need to drain their TP. And then, yeah, so in PvE content though, when you have a boss that has several tens of thousands of HP and you cannot kill them, reducing their TP and AP to 0 can be very powerful tools, because it renders the boss useless and only able to do basic attacks in some content. And then her new ability, and I guess I should have said this earlier, but you need 200 shards to get a unit to upgrade all of their previous abilities. To get the new ability, you need another 200 shards. So basically, the first 200 will get them to level 115 and give them the ability upgrades, and then the last 200 shards will get you all the way to 120, and with a new ability. So her new ability is AP Plunder, which is a low modifier, low range attack, but it has the cool thing that it costs 20 AP, and then drain 20 AP from an enemy, so reduces theirs by 20 and restores 20 for self. So it's kind of a free attack in a way, because at the end of the day, your AP remains the same, your enemy's AP will be lower, and they'll take the hit as well. So it can see some pretty interesting use. I think Oldoa is still a really cool unit with all this in mind. She's a unit with a very high amount of damage. She's a unit with high luck and high evasion if you want to go that route. She has the strongest drains in the game with Exorcist card if you have it. And she can drain TP. She can drain AP if you use the Assassin sub-job, and then she can also drain HP with the Drain Force. So she has ways to attack every single resource of an enemy character, aside from CT. So that's unique. No other characters don't necessarily have that, so it can lead to very unique and very interesting builds, in my opinion. I am going to build her because I find that very cool, and I can see a lot of different uses for it. But if you are not a player that likes trying out new things and making funky kinds of builds, she might not be the unit for you, because I don't believe there will ever be content for which you need Oldoa to be able to clear, right? So it's really a unit that you should build for fun and not for competitive reasons. Now let's take a look at Robb. And I would say out of the first batch, there are 2 units that are considered really good in the URs, and that's Robb and Sterne. So Robb is one of them. He becomes super evadey, so he gets a lot more evasion just because his luck goes much higher than it originally was. And then he has stats similar to Oldoa, so similar amount of speed, attack, and HP. So he does not have the highest attack for an EX job unit, nor is he the tankiest, but he is evadey, and then his ability upgrades are among the best. So his Congo becomes an ability that has Barrier Breaker, and that's really strong against a lot of units, and we're getting more and more units with barrier breaks and more units with barriers in the game, so it's just going to remain relevant as we move forward. His second upgrade I am less happy about because it's in his Samurai sub-job and not his main job. That means you don't benefit from one of his upgrades unless you're speccing him Samurai all the way. If you do use it though, it gives him defense penetration, and I've already said when talking about Oelde that defense penetration for any kind of attacker is critical at this state of the game, for PvP at least, because defense is so easy to build for. If you get him to 120, his new ability is really cool. He now gets an ability in a 5x5 diamond shape pattern, so a really large AoE, and that's not something he had before, and one of his weaknesses was that he could only hit in very specific patterns, but with this he can now more easily hit several targets at once, so it's really a good thing. Like turn 1 you use upgraded devotion and you get defense penetration, and then turn 2 you just wreck the enemies in an AoE, and if you're fighting an enemy with a barrier, turn 2 you'll break the barrier, and then turn 3 probably use that large AoE. So there are some really nice combinations here, and I think his EX job is definitely among the best ones to go for. Also, if you get him to 99, you get his super strong TMR that has some really niche use in life PvP, but also any kind of manual content. Having a piece of armor that can increase CT for all your team in an area can mean the difference between winning and losing in many scenarios, so don't sleep on that. It is worth getting him to at least 99 just for that piece of equipment. Now, Sterne. When I look at Sterne, I really regret that Oldoa doesn't have more attack, because Sterne in EX job has 531 attack. He will hit very hard. He is still a soldier, so his HP is still very low, so even as an EX unit he is rather squishy, and his kit really revolves around sacrificing HP. All of the abilities that he has that are upgraded for EX, and then also his new EX ability, all sacrifice his HP. So he is not made to remain on the field for a long time. He's there to go in with all of his might and then go out with a bang. The upgrades though are really good. The first one gives him defense penetration. I don't want to repeat myself, it's just great, you need that. His second one increases his hazard break modifier by 40%, and that's a lot. Like going with a 265% mod move is among the highest I've seen in the game, and with coupled with his super high init attack, his damage will have few equals among any units for a slash attacker, so it's very impressive. And then his new ability is also pretty cool because it decreases slash resistance, and we have so many dark slash attackers that a lot of people will be able to benefit from that in a team. It will be great for raids, it will be great for a lot of other content in PvE where you can plan around that. And then also for live PvP, so as long as it's manual, you can really plan around it. And even in Arena, if you're fighting tanky characters and you bring a bunch of slash attackers in your team, he's going to become an enabler for them. If he doesn't just one-shot the enemy, which he very well might do. So if you're a fan of glass cannon type characters that you need to plan around in order to use correctly, but that are very rewarding when you do manage to pull them off, I think Sterne is a good fit for that. Now, let's talk about Mont. And I had a couple people ask me, should I go for EX Mont? Yes, you should. Everybody should. He has one of the best EX upgrades. And I just want to point out a couple things in his stat block first. 4,250 base HP is insane. We've looked at a couple other 120 units, none of them went above the 2,700 mark so far. So he has the highest HP, I believe, in the game at the current time. And then his attack reaches 376. I do want to point out that currently, level 99 URs almost never reach 400 attack. There are a couple exceptions, but generally the 300 high 300 range is the range where a lot of good physical attackers are. So he gets a really good stat there. His agility is still rather low at 52, so that's something that's holding him back a little bit. And then he has 23 defense, which means that you can easily give him good armor and then golem and get him to over 60. So he's going to be a character with insane high HP and a ton of defense, which means that physical attackers will have a tough time killing him. Then his Stone Throw upgrade is kind of legendary. It gives you some defense penetration for this hit, which means you'll ignore some of the enemy's defense when you use it. Then it has a decent modifier of 121%, so it's actually a move that deals damage now. It becomes a guaranteed hit, and it decreases the enemy's move by 1. So it does a little bit of everything, and it only costs 5 AP, so in some content you could just sit back and keep throwing stones because you'll almost never run out of AP with such a cheap move. So there are uses for it, and it's also a great finisher on evasion units that might survive your first hit because it's a guaranteed move that's added to his kit. Then his Killer Blade, which is his staple move in PvP, absorbs 100% of the damage done. Remember how hard it is for physical attackers to deal damage to Mont right now with his high defense? Well, he can also heal himself back now, so that's very good. And then since it's his attack with the highest modifier, especially against humans, he will use it a lot. His new ability I'm a little bit less excited about. It's a break, so it's cool because it reduces the enemy's stats, but it has a very high cost. You will not be using this move in PvP. You will be using Killer Blade instead. So this is more of a PvE move, where you can use this to make sure that Mont can take even more hits by reducing the enemy's offense, but also he can go in front and then reduce the enemy's offense so that your other guys, if they're caught in AoEs, don't go down that easily. So it's a nice move, but it's really a PvE-oriented move in my opinion. So that's it for Mont. In PvP, I think he will have some play as a physical tank, and he's definitely one of the best right now, but he's going to stay relevant for a while. His main drawback is his lack of AoE attacks in general. He doesn't have a ton of those. He does have the Paladin Taunting Blade, but honestly, you might want to have him use Killer Blade so that it heals him now. But aside from that, he's very good, and he can actually hit people very hard now. So I think he's going to be worth leveling. Now, let's talk about Baelo. And we're in the SR territory, and I think you guys will understand now why I was saying that those characters become relevant now. Baelo EX job, 3600 HP, that's less than Mont, but still a very, very high amount. He also has less defense than Mont at 14. What he has though is 445 attack. That is more than Robb and Oldoa EX. So he has a very, very high base attack now. Also, his luck is very high for some reason, so he could be evadey as well. His agility is abysmal though, so while he can hit people really hard if he gets to act, he won't act very often. And also, his base AP is so low that he begins with only 14 AP, and even if you use bells, you're not going to be generating many. He might have a tough time using his abilities, especially if you try to make him use his Taunting Blade from his Paladin job in order to generate hate. So he's definitely not top tier, but he can see some play now. He's actually viable in terms of the damage he can provide. And then his upgrades are pretty good. His HP up now gives him more defense and spirit, so you can rank up your defense very high with this. I'm not a big fan of his Trinity Break upgrade because it just deals more damage. And then, as we mentioned, since he is going to have AP problems, that's not going to be a move that you see him use very frequently. Now his Sapping Sword is a little bit funny as well. It deals some decent damage and then heals him back, but it's not comparable to the Killer Blade from Mont that just drains all of the damage done and then has a higher base mod even against non-human targets. So while it isn't a bad move per se, it is not a game-changing one. It does give him access to healing, which is the main reason why I think it's good, because when you have a lot of defense and damage mitigation in general, your effective HP that you gain from every HP you heal is higher than for squishy targets. So he's got that going for him. Now, let's talk about Learte. And she will remain squishy, but she does get to 2400 HP, which is more than a lot of the 99 units right now. So with this, she'll be able to have around the 4000 HP once you factor in vision cards and other espers and whatnot. So she won't be as that squishy. And then she almost has 400 attack. Again, Kayn at level 99 has 336 attack. So Learte becomes very comparable in terms of her offense, surprisingly enough. So lower rarity units will become somewhat viable. Of course, they will still have their disadvantages. Learte has only 50 agility, so she won't get to act much in a fight. She is rather slow. And just like Baelo, she's going to suffer because of her low AP, so it's going to be tough for her to generate enough AP to use her moves frequently. What Learte does have, though, is a master ability that gives her plus 50 accuracy. If you are struggling against evasion teams, this girl has the highest accuracy in the game. Most people don't know that, but she can deal with evasion teams even without guaranteed hit abilities, because she just has such a high innate accuracy. And then her ability upgrades are interesting. She gains a charm chance on charge, which means that you deal some okay damage, and also have a chance to charm. Her Shadow Bind also has a chance to poison on top of immobilizing, and then deals a lot more damage with a 175% mod move. And then on top of that, she has Stop Arrow, which has a chance to stop. All of those I think are pretty interesting. And keep in mind, Learte has access to Barrage, and then if you're specking her Lancer in manual play, you could run a character with Barrage that uses AP Break when the enemy comes close, so that they can't actually hit her. So that's one way you could run her, although the AI will not use it, so it's only for manual play. And then another use for her is running her as a damage dealer that can revive your team because she has White Mage and she has access to full life. So there are niche uses where I think she can be a great character. Like, you don't have a spot for a healer in your team and you need another missile attacker that can chain with Frederica and Nivlu, for example. Well, bring her, and then you also have an insurance policy of being able to bring somebody back to life. So I think those lower rarity EX characters are characters that you should invest in, because while it will take a lot of farming to get the materials for them, you won't need to buy any shards. We're pulling them so frequently that it's only a matter of time before we have enough shards to get them all to 120. And they're going to be nice tools to have in our account for the MR and lower only content that we'll be getting, and then also just for some funky builds that you guys might want to run. I'm sure I'm not the only one who enjoys trying out different things. So that's it. That was a fairly long one because there's so many of them, but I wanted to give them all justice, not just go over the lower rarity ones quickly, for example. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it and learned a thing or two. If you did, please like and subscribe. It will make it more likely that you see my videos in the future. And then, what are your thoughts? Are you going to build any of them? Am I crazy to want to build EX Learte? Because I'm really excited. A ranger with base 400 attack seems pretty crazy to me. But either way, thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.